So here's the little power supply with the lights flashing and two annex. Okay, now right now both annex are on the same, measuring the same voltage. I mean physically measuring it and then displaying it. Okay, so they're within 1/100 of a volt. Actually, they're sometimes perfect. Here we go to, now we'll go to split power supply. So the meters measure the same value when they're both looking at one of the two supplies. Now that they're looking at opposite polarity supplies, see it's off by 1/10 of a volt. So I'm going to try to make the meters read the same. So now both rails are equally split. Again, within 1/100 of a volt. So I'm going to turn the power supply, main power supply, which is right now at 24.9 volts. Again, that's using another meter. I will try to turn it down. There's 18 volts. And you see, well, it's not bad. The meter has now switched decimal points. And you see it's 2/100ths of a volt off. There's 12 volts. Call that 3/100ths. So what do we have to start with? 24. That's pretty close to 24. And you see we're back almost perfect. So this does not track well. 14 volts. I'm surprised it still works at 4 volts because with 4 volts in, that's all we have powering the op amp. So let me try to turn it up to say 8 volts. So there's 8 volts. You see we're not tracking well at all. After setting the main power supply to something else, then you would have to readjust this slightly until this gets in balance again. Now all this is well out of load because I have no heat sinks. Let me see if I can jury rig a couple of heat sinks. So I've, as I said earlier in the first video, I've done a schematic. And although it came from Electronicx Express, the package is marked RSR, which is apparently the parent company of Electronicx Express. And for what it's worth, I've reproduced their parts list, my description, and I've got a page with pinouts and the physical method of numbering the components. I'll PDF both of these and stick them in a subdirectory to be linked to in the comments below. So I'm ready to hook a load to these two terminals. So that's to say it will be an unbalanced load. Now the unbalance is 100 milliamps exactly. Well, given the accuracy of the meter. And you see what happened right away to the balance. Take the load off and let it stabilize, and it comes right back where it should. Oh, by the way, this is 18 volts input. So we're losing assume that the 18 volt meter is indicating correctly. And we have a loss of 0.4 of a volt on each side. Now I'll put the load across the two outside terminals with a plus and minus. That means the loads will be exactly equal. So here is equally loaded at 110 milliamps for some reason. And not only did the supply become slightly unbalanced, it went way down with the load. Let me turn the load up. That's almost exactly 1 amp. And you can see not only are they down, they're still somewhat unbalanced. I'll just take the total load off. It pretty quickly settles back down. Now that there's a little bit of heat, only say 4 watts on each side. Put the load back on. So equally loaded, it stays pretty well balanced. By the way, these things are good to have. Well, binder clips in all different sizes. You find them in the office supply section of them. If you work in an office, that's where you find these. Otherwise, you have to get them at some place like Staples. So if you're willing to balance and or adjust the input power supply, this thing works tolerably well. Of course, if you want current limiting, you have to enable that in the source supply. I think these two capacitors, which I still have not installed, would just slow down response time. And you see, if you want to use these truly for balancing the system, you would have to put a trimmer on these, the two 1K voltage dividers. I'm sorry, two 10K voltage dividers. So to recap, it's $13 delivered. You get everything but the heat sinks. And although you can trim the balance, the voltmeter is wholly dependent on the similarity of these two voltage dividing resistors. And the little $28 annex are not bad either. Well, I heard the mail delivery truck drive up. Maybe the parts to complete the tracking power supply, which I intend to build on this board, will have arrived. See you later. Thank you.